Okay, testing. All right, we'll be solving some problems here. We've done this before, but now we have some new identities we can work with. Here's an equation. Sine of 2x equals root 3 cosine x. And this is for x is less than or equal to 2 pi and greater than or equal to 0. So basically one unit full of the units, one completion of the unit circle. Okay, from here all the way to here. All right. So basically the first thing we do here is recognize our double angle, which is 2 sine x cosine x. We have to know what the double angle identity is for sine of 2x. Okay? That equals root 3 cosine x. And notice we're going to subtract root 3 cosine x from both sides. Okay? And now I've got 2 sine x cosine x minus root 3 cosine x. And notice I've got a common factor here. Remember I talked about today, let's look to factor out common factors. One of the things that we always have to do when we are working these problems. So I factored out this cosine x. What was left here is 2 sine x and then the minus root 3. So either this, so now we've got this factored, right? Either cosine x equals to 0, one of these factors is 0, right? If something ends up being equal to 0, remember your algebra, it's this time, something times 0 is 0. So either this is 0 or this is 0. So if cosine x equals 0, okay, that's 1. Or 2 times sine x minus root 3 equals 0. So here I'm going to add root 3 to both sides, and then we'll divide by 2, okay? And I kind of did that up here as well. So end up with sine of x equals root 3 over 2, okay? So basically before I had the two things, either cosine of x equals 0, so what's inverse cosine of 0 equals, where's cosine 0? At pi halves or 3 pi halves, okay? All right, and that right here, pi halves, 3 pi halves, looky there. Or sine of x equals root 3 over 2. Where is sine root 3 over 2? Plus, well obviously if sine is positive, it's in the northern hemisphere here of your unit circle. So it's either pi thirds, 60 degrees, or 120 degrees, 2 pi thirds. Okay? All right, this examples are in radians. I could do them in degrees if I wanted, okay? So let's do another example. This one's going to be quadratic oriented, like a polynomial. All right, I've got 3 sine squared x, okay? So 3 times sine squared x equals 5 minus cosine x for just the top half. Pi, x is less than or equal to pi, but greater than or equal to 0. So we're looking at what? This top half of the unit circle, okay? Greater than 0 and greater or equal to 0, but less than or equal to pi. All right. So let's see what we did here, okay? They noticed one thing I talked about was getting things in the same sign. Okay, this is in cosine, and I can't really do a lot with cosine, but I can do something with sine squared x. So we're going to replace this sine squared x with, remember, with 1 minus cosine squared x. Remember, sine squared x plus cosine squared x equals 1, so 1 minus cosine squared x equals sine squared x. Okay, we did that today as well in our proofs. All right? So I replaced sine squared x with this equals 5 minus 5 cosine x. Now before I do anything, I'm going to distribute this 3. 3 times 1 and 3 times negative cosine squared x. And here I have 3 minus 3 cosine squared x equals 5 minus 5 cosine x. Notice what I've done now. We're going to get everything on one side. We're going to move everything to the right. So we add 3. I'm sorry, take that back. We subtract 3. This is my constant right here, just the constant. It's 3, so minus 3 from both sides. So 5 minus 3 is going to end up being this 2 here. We're going to add 3, to get rid of this negative 3 cosine squared x, it's plus 3 cosine squared x. So this is going to move over here. There's your plus 3 cosine squared x. Hence, 3 cosine squared x, you've got your minus 5 cosine x, and then you get this 5 minus 3 or the plus 2. Okay? All right? Think of this again as like 3x minus squared minus 5x plus 2. Okay, and you'd have to factor that into two binomials. Okay, and everything equals 0. Okay, so in this case, if you factored it and did your FOIL, 3x times x, this is cos, we're going to use cosine now instead of the x's, but 3 cosine x times cosine x is going to be 3 cosine x squared. My outer is negative 3 cosine x. My inner is negative 2 cosine x. That'll get me my negative 5 cosine x. And then I've got negative 2 times negative 1 is plus 2. All right, so either this equals 0 or this equals 0. Okay? Either this factor equals 0 or this. So what do? We add 2 to both sides, plus 2. And then we're going to divide by 3. So cosine x equals 2/3. And here, very easy, add 1 to both sides. 0 plus 1. Cosine x equals 1. So when you do inverse cosine of 2/3, if you're in radians, you'll get 0.841 radians, which is going to be 60-some degrees, okay? Or I don't know, I'm sorry. 1 radian is roughly 60 degrees, so a little less than 60 degrees. Over here, where's cosine 1? Just at 0. Remember where our angle was. It was we're not going to 2 pi. It's just from that. It's just 0. Okay. All right. So again, this dealt with what? Factoring out, moving things around, getting everything set equals 0, and in this case we had a factor. Okay. You factor everything out and set your factors. Either this is 0 or this is 0. Okay. Let's do one more example. Here, sine of 2x equals sine of x for the x is basically the unit circle from 0 to 2 pi, okay? Again, recognize the double angle. Sine of 2x is 2 sine x cosine x. That equals sine of x. We're going to subtract sine x from both sides, and now I've got 2 sine x cosine x minus sine x equals 0. Again, what do we want to do here? We want to look for common factors, sine and sine. So we're going to factor out a sine x. Look what we got. There it is, okay? Here's sine x. So if I took this out, I'm left with 2 cosine x. I take that out, I'm left with 1, minus 1, okay? So guess what? Either sine of x equals 0 or 2 cosine x minus 1 equals 0. If I add 1 to both sides and then I'm going to divide by 2, that'll be 1/2. So sine x equals 0, or like I've done here, I add 1 to both sides, divide by 2, cosine x equals 1/2. Okay, so right here, so if sine is 0, remember, inverse sine of 0, where's sine 0? On 0, pi, and 2 pi. Okay, because remember, we're less than or equal to 2 pi and greater than equal to 0. So we're on the unit circle. We start off at 0, sine is 0 here, here, and over here at 2 pi. Okay? So I got 0, pi, and 2 pi for x equals 0. Over here, I'm sorry, x equals 0, pi, 2 pi for the sine for this portion here. Okay? And now cosine x equals 1/2. Again, inverse cosine of 1/2 equals 60 degrees or pi thirds, but also 5 pi thirds. Remember cosine, it's going to be 60 degrees here or here. Okay, so it's either 60 to 300 or pi thirds or 5 pi thirds. Okay, 9 minutes. All right, so that's what we're going to be working. Okay, we need to know how to factor. We need to know our trig identities, our double angles, and so forth. Okay, see if we can work some problems tomorrow, and hopefully I feel better. Okay, all right. Have a good night, and be ready for your quiz tomorrow. Sum to product or product to sum. Okay. Good night.